Hi everyone, good evening. Let's start with today's session. So first of all, I'm very delighted that I have been given this opportunity to present in Stanford Camp. And today we'll be talking about Next.js with Storybook and Drupal. Good afternoon, everyone. Right now it's night over here, but I would like to say namaste to everyone. Namaste is basically a greetings which we do normally in India, and this is how we present. And welcome everyone to the session. Talking about myself, my name is Sibu Stephen. I have been working as a UI consultant at Digital Polygon. It's a consultancy firm which is specialized in digital experience market, and I've worked in with a couple of companies which is into Drupal domain. First, I would like to talk about fun facts about me. I like to produce music, remix, and publish on SoundCloud. That's my passion, which I do on weekends. And also, I am doing some research into UX. I'm exploring more into accessibility and A11Y things. And I also like to write often. Nowadays, I write technical blogs, but I did write and published a book named Livelihood of Living, which is there in Amazon.com. You can go and purchase one. Um, yeah. Today what we'll talk about is first I'll be introducing to Next.js on wider scale, and second I'll be talking about ways of integrating Next.js with Drupal, and third I'll be talking about usage of Storybook, and fourth I'll be showing some of the ways to integrate Storybook with Next.js. I'll be showing an demo of how Storybook is used with Next.js app, and what we can do in order to enhance our components. So let's begin with the session. Fun fact about Next.js. So we all know that it's a framework which is used, and at a wider scale, it's used around 13.52%, and but still it's most likely to be used than other frameworks or libraries like React or Angular. So we it there might be a question in our minds, why is it like Next.js is used very less, but it's more popular among the developers when we need to choose among various other frameworks or libraries. So this is the chart. So this is just a food for thought. You can see over here I have Node.js, which we have at 47.12%, and if you see Next.js, it's a 13.52%, and other frameworks including Django, Angular, Express, or any other frameworks or libraries which we are most familiar with, it comes at the top, but we see Next.js at very less, 13.52%. But why is it that we still prefer it? So the answer for that is, it lies in the pre-rendering methods. So basically there are four pre-rendering methods in Next.js and any other frameworks. The first is SSG, which is a static site generation. So what it basically is, it's updating the pages on and components on every request during the build time. So this is most probably one of the more keen takeaway on React or any other frameworks. They When we build a particular site, all of the components are compiled, and it's very perfect for dynamic data. If you want to consume a dynamic data, let's say we have a banner where we have a text and we want that text to be dynamic, then we use SSG and it's used very frequently. Then we have server side rendering. So what happens in that is, we generate pages during runtime and without any need to update it on regular basis. It's similar to other programming languages. For example, we have PHP, Ruby, Java. So if we do some changes over there, let's say we are writing an HTML over there, we are entering an HTML from PHP code rather than from our front end part. It's very quick, and quick in terms of rendering time. Though if so one so I'll talk about the disadvantage of SSR later. And the third one is CSR, which is when you don't have to continuously update your site. Let's say you have a single page application, you don't have to frequently update your data. It's just a one time thing. Let's say we have a blog page. For example, blog page is one good example of CSR. And any other React application, they use CSR where there's no dynamic data that needs to be there. So that's the third one. And fourth one is ISR, which is in combination is SSG. So one example of this is, let's say we have a menu item and we want to check after every 10 seconds that whether the data is changed or no. Or let's say there's a popular example of stock market, where we are showing the stock market is going up or down. We need to check without having the configuration of SSR. We want to check whether any data is updated after every 10 seconds. Then we can use this ISR along with SSG. So I'll show a code example of each of them to demonstrate how it is. Please feel free to ask questions on the chat. I'll be covering it later in the session. So this is the flow how CSR, SSR and SSG is. So the client side scripting, how it works is we have this is the render to DOM from JavaScript. We have a browser over here. We have an Next.js pre-processing. So there's no pre-processing happening here, meaning like it's not from the server. It's not doing any pre-processing. Rather than it's just having a request. It's just showing the data instead of rendering whole HTML. So client-side scripting is very fast compared to SSR and SSG, but each has its own benefits. So server-side rendering is basically sending HTML, your whole of the data, right from your backend, and sending it directly to the HTML without any processing time. So SSR, one disadvantage I would say is the load time is more, because on every request we are fetching whole of the HTML on every request. Let's say we are updating particular element, we are re-rendering the whole of the data. So it's similar to PHP or any other languages. You can correlate it with PHP, Java or Ruby, where they send the data directly, like whole of the HTML or whole of the data. So you can see how it's fast, but at the same time there are some issues with respect to the performance of the site. And the third is SSG, where we have a CDN which comes in middle of Next.js response and the browser. So it communicates. It acts as a middleware between your browser and your Next.js rendering at the build time. So as I said, SSG, it's during build time all of the page is built, and SSR it's during your runtime. So that's the main difference between both of them. So let's take a look at the example of SSG. So here we can see we have a component named myblog, and it's only returning static data. We are not rendering any dynamic data over here. We are not doing any let's say we are not awaiting any JSON API, and we are trying to fetch any data. There's nothing like that. We are just returning a simple div in this React component. We are rendering it to our component, to our main component. So in SSR, one key function which is used in Next.js is get server side props. So this works as a async function and it returns the props. So I'll be showing a basic example of how this works, of how this particular function is comes to use. So as I said, if we want to validate our site after every 10 seconds, and I want to set this timing should be dynamic. Let's say I want to do it after 20 seconds, 10 seconds, or after 5 seconds, depending upon the what my requirement is. We can do that using revalidate key value pair. which is used within get static props. So the get static props is so it basically fetches the API, then it sends to the get static path. So those two functions, this get static props and get static paths, both are used in SSG, CSR, as well as in ISR methodologies. Okay, so this is how the flow is. So we have a Next.js app where all the client side scripting, or if I want to do server side scripting, then it happens in Drupal, and it's sending the data directly to Next.js and then to the browser. So the same data, we have HTML over here, we have HTML over here, which is sent directly. While this is not the case with his CSR or ISR, the data is sent from, let's say this can be any CMS, not just Drupal. We have this data from here, we have our pre-processing happening over here in Next.js, and then the data is sent. So that's the difference of how the workflow is for each of them. Okay, so let me show you an example of how it works. So I have already started a server. So this is one of the most popular example which I wanted to showcase to you all. So we have this list, check dogs and fruits. So we have this page. So here we have a list of dogs, and if I click on this dog, we have the information. It's a friendly dog. This Fido is a type of dog breed, and it's a friendly dog. And let's say I have Rocky, it's a small dog. So I don't know what it associated with which breed, but so I have a Rocky, it's also a small dog. So this data had I took it from a dummy database, so I can't exactly say which breed that particular dog is, but these are my dogs names. So yeah, so let's go to the carousel. So I have this carousel page where if I refresh the page, you can see the name of the dog over here and the name of the dog over here. The two dogs which are getting rendered dynamically on every page refresh. So here if you see, so it's a dynamic randomly generated data. So this is something which SSR is doing. It's rendering all of the data at the server side, and it's very spontaneous. So I'll just show the code example of how it works. So let me similarly show the fruits part. It's nothing, just I just use the same thing, but I just change the fruits name and its colors. So this is grape, it's green in color, and we have apple which is red in color. So if we do the same thing over here for this, so we have this data which is rendering dynamically. So let me pull the code and show you how it is working. So we have this page. This is the main page where we had list of dogs and fruits. So I didn't change anything much over here. It's the Next.js app page, and I just showed the dogs, links of dogs and fruits over here. So let's go to the actual code base. So first of all, let me show the database which I have. I have used a local database over here. We have this ID, name, description of dog. So this is the database, and similarly for fruits, I have this. So here I have the database, and here I have the definition of each. So here I am saying that this ID is a number, like type. What should be the type of each of those? So this is the number. ID would be default a number, and the name of the dog would be string, and description would also be string. There's no other types which are used, so it's just a string data which I am. So this is the schema, I would say. So let me show. Okay, so first of all, when I said get static props and get static paths, so these are default functions which are used over in any of the React application or any application. So here what it does is basically we are having this params which is generated from get static paths. So here if you see, I am actually declaring this dog database, and I am mapping, I am trying to iterate those with so what I'm doing is I'm trying to generate the path of each, and then I'm passing this data to the get static props. And here what it does is it's trying to, there's a query which is happening like dogs dot find the dog and then pass it as string. So it's just returning the data of the dog according to the path which is there. So get static path and get static props are basic functions which are used to render your data dynamically according to each path. So here as I had showed you, we have parts of each of them. Let's say I have dog 1. So here I have index 1. This is the fido which was indexed at 1. Let me show that. Fido. Let me just show you fido dog over here. If you see, it's yeah. So it's actually right now it's dynamic because this is something SSG, because I am doing it. Building it, building the. If I don't do it, then it won't work. So okay, so where was I? Yeah, so I was showing this ID. So the main part, the carousel where I was showing two dogs simultaneously, and so I talked about one function which was get static props, get static got it, sorry, get server side props. So what it does is it's actually it's sorting the dogs in the database, and it's using this random function which is a JavaScript function where it randomly generates the data, randomly generates the data whatever we have. So we are trying to split it into two, like there were two, or let's say we can do it three as well if you want to show three docs simultaneously, and is sending the data. So so if we don't use this, then we won't be able to. So I'll show you, I'll show this how we can remove it from this function and how it won't be a SSR, which is server side rendering. So let me build this site and you will be able to understand what is SSR, SSG and static sites. So I'm trying to build this site, and it takes a few seconds to work. Yeah, so here you see there are three icons over here. One is stat. Okay, so we have this got server side props. Let me change it to let's say get static props. Okay, yeah, get static props. So we need to declare this static props, which is a default function in Next.js. It comes as a default in Next.js package. So let's build this app again and see how it is now rendering. Let's say if that carousel for fruits and dogs, whether it would be SSR or no. So right now I have replaced it with get static props, so you'll be able to understand the exact difference between both of them. So now if you see, we have only one, which is fruits carousel. I didn't change the path in the fruits carousel, I just changed it in the dogs one. So if I remove it from this, this won't even appear. So I'll just remove it, and let me go to the fruits directory, and let me do the same over here, and you will not be able to see the get server side props at all because you're not using it in the application. Let me build it again. So it's building. It takes few seconds to compile. It's default way how it works. It has to go through all the bundles and packages to create the build. So let's see, we have any server side? No. So if you see, we don't have any server side prop because we are removed that get server side props. We are not using it anywhere right now. This is all dynamic data and static data. So this is dynamic, meaning it would only there will only things which are running build time. So let me now run the application and let's go to the what was it? It's at 3000, right? Yeah. So if you see, so there is a thing I am right now building it. So it's actually not as efficient as it was before. So it still works, but it's we are not doing it as an SSR level. So that was what I wanted to show about SSR and SSG. Let me yeah, shut down the server. Yeah, so right now I just I showed some of the important aspects of Next.js and why it is most commonly used. If we want the power of Node.js and React application both, then Next.js is one particular framework by Vercel, which is very cool. Uh, Now let's understand the architecture and how we have to proceed with the installation of Next.js with Drupal. So let's do that. What are the ways of integrating Drupal with Next.js? So this is the initial step. First is install your Drupal instance either using Lando, DDEV or Vagrant. Next step would be install Next.js module in Drupal, and third would be installing JSON API module, which is part of core in Drupal, and then install a boilerplate for Next.js, which is create a React app, and next link of the GitHub, the Next.js app. And fifth would be last point would be changing environment variable according to your dev. So if you have any Drupal dev, WordPress dev site or any contentful anything, you can change the environment variables according. Let's say you want to render the public images from a particular site, and you want to take the data from another site. We can do that using environment variables. We can set that over there. So there are two ways in Drupal to do this. One is using Pantheon, which is one of the things which we have integrated in our company's website, and second is chapter 3, which is using nextdrupal.org, and this is very efficient. So both are efficient, both has its pros and cons. So in DDEV, if you want to install DDEV for front end, Pantheon itself has a documentation, and if you want to have a decoupled preview, which is having SSG part rendered from your Drupal application using the decoupled preview button, so you can do that as well. If you want to see your live view from your Drupal, then decoupled preview is available in Pantheon. So there's a documentation, a whole lot of documentation in Pantheon, where you can integrate your Next with Drupal. So for today's demo, I'll be using the nextdrupal.org, which is very easy, and anyone can do this setup very easily and try out things. So let's quickly create a Next.js app with Drupal application, and let's try to communicate both of them. So I have already created a documentation over here. So I'll be sharing this link as well, where you can go ahead and do your setup. So let me follow this exact steps and do the setup. Okay. So I'll be using this folder. Inside this, we will be having a Drupal folder and Next.js app folder. Let me create this. Okay, I think I had already created it. Okay, let me remove it. Let me create a different name. So I wanted to check whether it's working, so I had created before, which I should have deleted previously before the session. Yeah, no worries. I'll just cd into that directory, and let me pull the d10. So right now Drupal is in d10. We can use any version. d9 would also be supportive to Next.js application as well. Let's start our Drupal server. First, for this we you need Docker as well. So there's a different documentation for ddev. You can go through that and how you can set up your Drupal site in ddev. Okay, I have an error. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me quit. Let me restart my Docker. Give me 1 second. So if there are images used in Docker, if there are multiple images, then this error shows up, like the network is you have a same image used in similar network. So you can restart your Docker and it would work. Let's do it quickly. It's restarting. Bear with me for 1 second, or for 1 minute or so. So we were here setting up our weekend site. Let me remove this web folder recursively. And let me okay, before doing that, let me check whether ddev is working. Or so this basically what we are doing is we are creating a web directory which has the Drupal 10 installation and then all the basic configs of Drupal. Okay, it's still loading. Okay, so let me quickly create a d10 instance. Now it should work. Okay, now let me check why this is working. Let me stop another container, which is another demo. I think that's the reason why it's not working. Okay, now let me start this. Okay, now the video has started. Hopefully it should not throw an error. Okay, it should work now. Let's quickly follow the next step. So here we are installing the core. So core, so recommend project has core default Drupal core libraries or modules installed. So yeah, yes, we have the site up and running. So now let's to install some of recommended Drupal by default core things. Yeah. So it would take the root branch and it will install the default things needed, which comes with Drupal core and some other things. Okay, so let me install Drush. It's installing it just takes a few minutes, but yeah. Just one second, we should be almost done now. Meanwhile, maybe I can I can do this. I can create another folder and try um, setting up our so we have two folders. Let me create a next app quickly. Okay, no, my bad. So let me create a next app simultaneously so that we can save some time. So in next step we just need to do one thing, which is change two things basically. One is changing our environment example to environment local, where we'll all have the attributes respect to the dev site which we need to link, and the images we need to enter. So there are, if we are using Pantheon, then it would have a variable which is used in the Pantheon server, and we can use that variable over here, and it would be so it would be a dynamic thing, like whatever changes would be there in the dev link site URL in the Pantheon site, that would we will be using that using the variable. So that's more easy. So next so let me, so this also takes a couple of minutes, says it clearly. So okay, let's wait. Okay, until this happens, now it's installed. So I have just installed the DDAV composer Rush, and it's working now. So let me create an account and install the site quickly. So this would take time, and in the meantime Next.js app is being set up. Okay, so so let me talk about. So we have a Drupal application, we have a twig. It has its data exposed either to decouple applications or the twig which is used with Drupal. We have a data basically which is sent to the browser, but before that there's some theming done using Sass, Bootstrap or Tailwind, and once it's themed it is displayed on the browser. And in Storybook what it happens is we are sent which is provided, and it communicates with our decouple application or twig,